Casey.
And I'm Fallon.
And this is
Render the Darkness.
So, your worldly fact for today's episode is that Scotland's national animal is a unicorn, which only makes me love Scotland even more.
Oh, that's cool. I love unicorns.
I think that's the coolest national animal on the planet.
Unicorns. All right.
Charlie. Sorry.
Alright, so in this episode, we will be talking about the Elizabeth Short case. Now, this will also be a two-part episode. Most people recognize this case as the Black Dahlia case. Now, during the investigation, there were a lot of suspects that the police were looking into, but as of today, there still haven't been any arrests. Now, hopefully I don't confuse anyone because there is some going back and forth throughout this case, so hopefully I do it justice. I also want to go ahead and let you know that this case does contain adult content and some other graphic details. I will let you know when we're about to discuss this information. Okay, so Elizabeth Short was born in the Hyde Park section of Boston, Massachusetts on July 29th, 1924. She had 4 sisters, but she was the third daughter born to Cleo Alvin Short Jr., who was born October 18th, 1885, and passed away on January 19th, 1967. Her mother, Phoebe May Sawyer, was born July 2nd, 1897, and passed away on March 1st, 1992. Her sisters were Virginia May, born in 1920, Dorothea Schlosser, born in 1922, Eleonora Chalmers, born in 1925, and Muriel, born in 1929. Now, her father served in the Navy and was born in Gloucester, and her mother was a housewife that was born in Millbridge, Maine. Her parents were married in Portland, Cumberland in 1918. They moved to Portland, Maine for a little while before they decided to move to Medford, Massachusetts, which is a suburb of Boston. Later in that year. Boston. Now, Elizabeth's father was building miniature golf courses until 1929, the stock market crash, which made him lose most of his savings. In 1930, they found his abandoned car on the Charleston Bridge, and people assumed that he had jumped off the bridge. So, thinking that her husband had died, Phoebe started working as a bookkeeper to be able to keep supporting her family. Elizabeth was diagnosed with bronchitis and severe asthma, which caused her to have to undergo lung surgery at the age of 15. Now, after the surgery, the doctor said that she should go to places with mild climates to possibly prevent any more lung issues. Now, she would eventually start to travel a lot throughout her life. Her mother said that she left high school to be able to go out on her own. Elizabeth had dark hair, light blue eyes, and a pale complexion. She did work sometimes, but normally she didn't have any money and would stay with friends or hotels that friends would pay for. Now, her mother also said, quote, she was a very affectionate, sweet girl, and if she was out at night, she always stopped in my bedroom to talk, and she would talk and tell everything that she had done and everything, end quote. Now, in 1942, Elizabeth's mom would actually receive a letter from her husband, which she thought was dead all this time, apologizing to her.
No, sir. You're gonna have to do more than write a letter.
Yeah, that's not gonna work.
That is no.
He actually told her that he had started a new life out in California.
Well, good for him, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's not nice.
No.
Now, according to another source, her and her mother had actually seen her father on the streets in Medford, Massachusetts. Elizabeth's mother said that her daughter had a talk with her father and that she later wrote to him saying she would like to come live with them. Her dad said that he sent her $200 and she moved in with him in December of 1942. Now, that $200 was like having $3,958 today.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was quite a bit of money back then. Now, after living in Vallejo for a while, they decided to move to Los Angeles. And about 3 weeks later, she took a job at Camp Cook in a post exchange, which is a store that is on a military base that sells general goods. She arrived on January 29th, 1943, and according to an FBI memo, she was one of the applicants looking to get the clerk position at the exchange. But Ralph Ellsworth, the manager of PX, said in an interview that Elizabeth, quote, Only worked a couple of weeks for me before she took off, not long after being chosen Camp Cutie, end quote. Now, she met a man named Matt Gordon in Miami, Florida in 1944, where he was on leave. Some sources do say that he was on leave, others say that he was training for deployment. But they had a short lived romance that ended when Matt had tragically died in a plane crash in India on August 10th, 1945.
That's terrible.
Yeah, it's pretty sad. She received word of Matt Gordon's death on August 22nd by his mother. She said, quote, "Just received word from the War Department that Matt was killed in a crash. Our deepest sympathy is with you," end quote. Now, Elizabeth would go on carrying the newspaper clipping and telling people that she was now a widow. Now, she did tell people also that Matt had proposed to her after the plane crash in Pueblo, Colorado, while he was recovering from his injuries. So he actually was involved in 2 different plane crashes. Now, she moved to Chicago with a guy named Jack to a hotel called Blackstone. And while she was there, she started to express interest in the Suzanne Degner case, the murder that was committed by William Hernez. I'm going to say it's Hernez. I am going to let you know that there's a content warning here involving a child. He had actually dismembered the body of a 6-year-old girl.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was pretty bad. Now, there was someone named Freddie Woods that claimed to be a friend of the girl who was killed. Now, this guy was 23 at the time, so I'm not too sure of how he was friends with a 6-year-old. So I'm assuming that he said he was friends with her because he knew her parents, maybe.
Let's hope.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to assume. He said that Elizabeth was fascinated by the murder and that he had met her when she had stayed in Chicago for 10 days. Now, she had claimed that she was a reporter that was covering the trial of William. And she went back to Los Angeles in July of 1946 to spend some time with an Air Force Lieutenant Joseph Gordon Flicking, someone she had met while in Florida where he was stationed in Long Beach. He went to the bus depot to pick her up, and she went to stay at the Washington Hotel in Linden, and was there from July 22nd until August 3rd. Now, she started hanging around the Landers drugstore quite often and would attract all kinds of men, especially men in uniform. David Landers said, quote, "She was very popular with the men who visited the soda fountain, and they got to calling her the Black Dahlia, partly because of her clothes and partly because of the flower-like arrangement of her jet black hair," end quote. Now, then on August 20th, her and Gordon decided to get a place together in Lexington Avenue at the Brevoort Apartments, where they said that they were husband and wife. Now, the two continued to live together until August 27th, when they split up and she moved to the Hawthorne Hotel. Now, here she's seen a friend of hers by the name of Marjorie Graham, who was living at the Hawthorne with her friend Lynn Martin, who was a 15-year-old runaway. Elizabeth only stayed with Marjorie for a night before she actually registered herself at the hotel. Now, she stayed at that hotel until September 20th. After a short trip to San Diego with her boyfriend Robert Manley, who also went by Red and who was also married at the time to another woman, she came back home to Los Angeles on June 9th, 1947. Now, he did state to the police that he had dropped her off at the Baltimore hotel because she was supposed to meet her sister that had to come visit from Boston. Now, the staff at the hotel did remember seeing her use the lobby phone, and she was supposedly seen by some guests at the Crown Grill cocktail lounge that was pretty close to the hotel as well. Alright, so the morning of January 15th, 1947, at 11:07, a woman who was taking her baby daughter for a stroll in her carriage noticed something that looked a little strange when she was walking south on Norton. And when she got closer, she seen that it was the naked body of a woman who had been cut in half. Now, she ran to the closest house while trying not to scare her daughter and asked them to use the phone. She called the police and then immediately left. After receiving the call, officers S.J. Lambert and J.W. Haskins arrived at the location at 11:18. A few moments later, Sergeant Finis A. Brown, who was a homicide detective, and his partner detective Harry L. Henson went to examine the body. So in a police report, it said that the body didn't have any blood on it at all, which made it seem like the killer washed the body after committing the crime. The report also stated that there were ligature marks on her arms and legs, and she had been strangled because there were marks on her neck as well.
Do you think it's possible that rather than the theory of they had showered her or bathed her, Maybe they killed her somewhere else and then took her body there.
Yeah, it's possible, but I mean, if they cut her in half, but she didn't have any blood on her, they would have to have
cleaned the body.
Clean the body somehow.
Unless they were like professional, like a doctor or somewhere that would know exactly where to
cut without
make that incision without hitting anything that might, like an artery or anything that might cause blood to splatter or spurt.
That is true. Yeah, that could definitely be it. Now, when Officer Lambert went back to the police station, he reported that a tire track led to the body, which could mean that someone had her in a car and dropped her body at that location. There was a blood smear on the track that could have been left by a shoe, and there was another blood spot about an inch from the curb in the driveway. They also found more blood on a bag that had cement in it earlier. Now, as the day went on, more and more people showed up at the scene. Some were more officials and some were more reporters. Now, the Black Dahlia would make newspaper headlines for weeks. Now, Sergeant Brown thought that the killer purposely placed the body for everyone to see. Now, according to the Black Dahlia in Hollywood.com, he said, quote, "It would indicate that it was dropped. The upper half was quite a little further in. The left foot, was about a foot from the sidewalk. The person wouldn't have to drop the body or flip it out there. Wouldn't have to lean over it to do it, It didn't land absolutely straight. If it had been laying right together, the two halves were about a foot apart. But her legs were spread, and the type of mutilation that was done would indicate a person, to my estimation, who had a mania for publicity. The newspapers up until the 23rd, when things began to slack off, and we only had one page of the newspaper, one column, the 23rd and the 24th. That night we received the belongings of the short girl. The next day it was full. The paper was full of it then. It continued that way until altogether about 33 days. To my estimation, the person sent that in because they wanted publicity to gloat over the fact that they had been successful in their crime and they got a kick out of it," end quote. Now, also according to the Black Dahlia and Hollywood.com, Lieutenant Frank B. Jemison of the Bureau of Investigation filed a report on October 28th, 1949, saying how the body looked. Okay, so just to let you know, there is a content warning here. Some of the information in this report is pretty graphic in nature. The report said, quote, "The body had been cleanly severed at the midline, and the lower half was laying about 1 foot to the south of the upper half, both parts laying absolutely flat, with the protruding entrails of the lower one half laying under the buttocks. There was a marked post-mortem lividity on the top side of both parts, indicating that the victim had lain on her front side or face for some period of time immediately following her death. The body had been washed. There were bristles of a stiff brush still adhering to the body. There were several lacerations on the forehead, which appeared to have been inflicted by a blunt instrument. Lacerated left breast and lacerated right breast, the top of which appeared to have been removed. The area covered by the pubic hair was slashed in a crisscross fashion, and the scarcity of hair gave rise to the opinion that her hair had been cut off rather than close to the skin. It wasn't shaved. Now, there was a tic-tac-toe slashing on the right hip. The mouth was badly slashed, approximately 3 inches from the corner, and the upper lip was deeply lacerated on the right-hand side. There were possible strangulation marks on the neck and definite rope or tie marks on both lower legs and arms. Now, from the lack of bloodstains around or under the body, it is definite conclusion that she was killed elsewhere. Photographs were taken of the body and measurements, as well as photographs of a tire track at the curb line at a point opposite of where the body was found. Upon removing all of the body by the coroner's deputies, it was found that the grass underneath the body was still wet with dew, indicating the body had been placed there after the dew fell in the early morning hours at approximately 2 a.m. January 15th, 1947. Rigor mortis had not begun to set in, indicating that the murder would probably have been committed after 1 a.m. January 15th, 1947, as the coroner believes rigor mortis would set in within 10 hours' time. He stated the cause of death as shock and loss of blood from hemorrhage. He reported that ecchymosis appeared on the lacerations of the head, face, and right breast, while ecchymosis appeared on the left breast and on the right breast and on the cuts severing the body at midline.
So do you think that because they're saying that they think the cause of death was shock and blood loss from hemorrhage, that she was alive when he started cutting on her?
It could be. I mean, she may have been alive whenever he did that. Now, and it's also saying that there is no ecchymosis on all the other lacerations, indicating they were inflicted post-mortem. So, now, the ecchymosis occurs when blood leaks from a broken capillary into surrounding tissue under the skin, which causes discoloration, according to medicalnewstoday.com. So I'm guessing because there wasn't, or there was on the head and the face and the right breast, that he did those cuts before she was
Okay,
dead.
so she was alive when he did the started cutting on her top
Yeah.
half, and then she passed away sometime before he reached her bottom
Right.
half.
Yeah, and then the other half, the other side, he did afterwards.
That's terrible.
It
That
is.
is absolutely horrible.
It's just awful. Now, the flesh cut from her left thigh, weighing approximately a pound, was found in her vagina, and the pubic hair was found in the rectum. There were no cigarette burns and no tattoo marks on the body. Mr. Ray Pinker of the crime laboratory was only able to acquire a few drops of blood from this body and typed it as AB, which is a rare type of blood appearing in less than 6% of human bodies. Now, the officers requested that the coroner and the county chemist analyze the vital organs chemically to determine, for one thing, whether or not her body contained narcotics. Now, at a later date, when the officers requested the results, they were informed that these vital organs had been misplaced and had probably been thrown out at the time they were cleaning up the laboratory, and further, they had made no analysis, end quote.
I'm sorry, did you just say that when they were cleaning up the laboratory, they threw away her vital organs?
Yes. They somehow, for some reason, threw away her organs. I don't know. I don't see how that could happen. But yeah, that's what they said happened.
That is crazy. That kind of stuff happens in these cases all the time. They're always losing evidence in one way or another, and it's always like really crucial, vital evidence that they need in order to find the killer or get a conviction. Always. I don't understand what's happening in the judicial system to where these things aren't better organized or safeguarded or something.
Yeah, I have no idea. You figure something like that would be put in the proper place, locked.
Yes, somehow sealed properly. I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Now, someone that claimed to be Elizabeth's killer made a phone call to James Richardson, the editor of the Examiner, on January 21st, 1947. This person said that eventually they planned to turn themselves in, but wanted the police to try and find them.
Cat and mouse.
Yep, doing a cat and mouse. They also said that they planned on sending out some souvenirs of her in the mail. Now, a few days later, on January 24th, a manila envelope was found that was addressed to the Los Angeles Examiner and some other papers as well. And the person that sent the envelope had cut out words from the newspaper clippings and pasted them on the envelope. The words said, "Here is Dahlia's belongings. Letter to follow." The envelope contained her birth certificate, business cards, photographs, pieces of papers with names, an address book that had the name of Mark Hansen on the cover. Now, the police think that the envelope was sent by her killer because it was cleaned with gasoline, much like Elizabeth's body. Now, even though the person tried to clean the envelope, they were able to find quite a few partial fingerprints, and those prints were sent to the FBI for testing. Now, unfortunately, something happened, and the fingerprints were not able to be correctly tested.
Of course.
Now, on the same day, about 2 miles from the crime scene, someone found a handbag and a single black suede shoe. When the police retrieved them, they noticed that those items were also wiped clean with gas, removing any possible evidence that could have been present. Now, on March 14th, a caretaker of a beach found a pile of clothes and went to tell what he had found to the lifeguard captain, John Dillon. The caretaker said that the clothes had a suicide note that was stuck in the shoe, which said, "To whom it may concern, I have waited for the police to capture me for the Black Dahlia killing, but have not. I am too much of a coward to turn myself in, so this is the best way for me. I couldn't help myself for that or this. Sorry, Mary." Now, John Dillon immediately called Captain L.E. Christensen of the West Los Angeles Police Station. Now, when the police got there, they found a coat, a pair of pants, a brown and white t-shirt, white jockey shorts, socks, and leisure shoes that were a size 8. But these clothes unfortunately didn't give any clue as to who they may belong to. Now, because his name was on the address book, Mark Hansen was quickly pointed out as a suspect. It said that supposedly Elizabeth had stayed at his home at some point, and some say that he had said that the purse and the shoe found on the trash can were for sure Elizabeth's. Now, one of her friends, Ann Toth, had said that she had recently rejected Hansen and said that could be a good reason for him to have killed her. But he was eventually cleared of having anything to do with her death. Now, the police did interview more than 150 men in the following weeks, and Manley, the last person to see her alive, was cleared as well after he passed many polygraph tests. Now, according to the Black Dahlia and Hollywood.com, one person that was suspected of her death had an interesting past. He was connected with 2 beautiful and attractive women, one being Elizabeth, that had been murdered. Now, his name was Carl Bossinger. So let's talk a little bit about Carl. Carl was born on June 16th, 1960, and in 1940 he was a private in the U.S. Army. Before that, he was a salesman. Now, Carl went to the same college as a woman named Layla Adele Welsh in Kansas City. At the age of only 21, Layla was brutally murdered in her family home in her own bedroom. Now, it's said that she was beaten with a track chisel that caused severe damage to her head. Now, I had to look up exactly what a track chisel was because I wasn't really sure. And I found that a track chisel is a tool used to cut and score railroad rails, which is typically used with a sledge to break the rail cleanly.
Okay.
Now, her throat had been cut ear to ear with a 7-inch blade that was found outside of her bedroom later. There was a chunk missing from her right hip that was later found outside her home. Now, does that part sound familiar at all?
It does. It does.
Now, at first the police thought that her brother George W. Welsh Jr. was the culprit. At his trial, the paper said that, quote, the crowd was so great at the preliminary hearing for George W. Welsh Jr. in Kansas City yesterday that he was forced to enter the courthouse through a window, end quote. Yeah, so I'm not sure if, like, people were, like, going to mob him or, like, I don't know, but that's crazy he had to go through a window. Now, according to the Black Dahlia and, so that was according to the Black Dahlia and Hollywood.com. Now, George was eventually acquitted for the murder. When Elizabeth was working at Camp Cook, Carl was there as well. The police did interview him about the murder on January 20th, 1947. Now, remember that address book that was in the envelope that was sent in to the Examiner on June 21st?
Yes.
Well, there was a piece of paper with Carl's name on it in that address book.
Okay.
Now, Carl did tell them that he had met Elizabeth on December 6, 1946 at a real estate office, and he had given her a ride to Camarillo, where he had, quote, made a sale of supplies to a baker, end quote. Now, after he went back to Hollywood, he had booked her a room for the night, and then he dropped her off at the bus depot in Hollywood later the next day, where she told him she was going to visit her sister in San Francisco. Now, according to Detective Brown, after flying to Missouri to give Carl a lie detector test, he first told them that he had spent a day and a night with her, but then later he said that they were together until December 8th. The Los Angeles District Attorney also said that, quote, it was established that this suspect on 2 occasions had given different women vicious beatings, apparently for no good reason, end quote. It was also said that George W. Welsh, Layla's brother, was also in Los Angeles when Elizabeth was murdered. But there was never any evidence that the two knew each other. So eventually, like many of the other suspects, Carl was forgotten as the years went by. There was another letter that was sent to the Examiner on January 26th. This time, the person had handwritten it. The letter said, here it is, turning in Wednesday, January 29th, 10 a.m. Had my fun at police. Black Dahlia Avenger. Now, the letter stated a location that the killer would be at, and the police went there and waited on January 29th, but no one showed up. At 1 p.m. on the same day, there was another letter, which this time was cut and pasted, and that letter said, have changed my mind. You would not give me a square deal. Dahlia killing was justified. So there had been other letters that the Herald Express were sent that were also cut and pasted clippings, and one of those letters said, I will give up on Dahlia if I get 10 years. Don't try to find me. So for 35 days, the newspapers continued to run the information regarding Elizabeth's murder and the investigation, but with no new leads. On February 1st, the Los Angeles Daily News put out an article saying the case had, quote, run into a stone wall, end quote. The lead investigator, Captain Jack Donahue, had told the papers at one point that he thought Elizabeth was killed somewhere on the outskirts of Los Angeles and that the killer had taken her body to where she was found. The way that the cuts on her body were so precise led the LAPD to think that maybe the killer had some medical knowledge.
So I was right.
So in mid-February, the University of Southern California Medical School, that was in close proximity of the crime scene, was served a warrant that asked for the full list of the class's students. Now the school would agree, but they had asked that the student's identity to stay private. But after the investigation, there were no connections or evidence. So this is where we will stop for part 1. In part 2, we will talk about the different suspects, theories, confessions, possible crimes that may be related, and we will also talk about some of the rumors as well. So that is the first part.
Well, it sounds like they've really put in a lot of work towards trying to figure out who did this to her.
Yes, they're definitely trying to figure it out.
It's good to see them care enough to do all of that.
Yeah, for sure.
Poor Elizabeth. Could not imagine. That's terrible.
Elizabeth Layla.
I will say, though, based on what you said there at the end, Carl definitely seems pretty suspicious.
Yeah, he is.
He has a lot of connections and ties and...
Yeah, it's crazy that he knew of them both.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he is.
I mean, obviously you can't say innocent until proven guilty and all that, but if you're going on evidence, he's got an awful lot of connections.
Yeah, he seems a little sus. Just a tad bit.
I don't think it was the brother at all, George.
No, I don't really think. I mean, it is kind of weird that he was in the vicinity when Elizabeth got killed, but
I feel like, though, if he had done that or participated in that or whatever, I just feel like he would have been more careful about not being seen.
Yeah.
Because if supposedly he had participated or gotten in trouble before for being associated with another one, then you would think he wouldn't be, if he did it again or tried to do it again, he wouldn't be sloppy that time.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think he had anything to do with it. I just think he was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
I think so too. I mean, and plus, that was his sister, right?
Yeah.
So he could have been going over there to visit her or see if she was home.
Yeah.
Or they could have had, similar friends in that area. Who knows?
Agreed.
I just, my gut is saying Carl, but I won't know how my gut truly feels until I hear part 2.
Right, yeah. There's a few more suspects that we are going to talk about. I'm not going to say exactly how many.
It could be a lot. I heard you say 150 men were interrogated. That's a lot.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of suspects, but like I said, there's a few that are that look pretty good.
Okay, well, we'll see how my gut feels after the second part.
Yeah.
But as of right now, at the end of part 1, I definitely lean towards Carl.
Going towards Carl. All right.
Yeah, that's me personally. But, okay. Well, I am excited to hear the second part of the case and more information about more leads or more things that they may have found.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested in getting all the research together. Hopefully, fingers crossed, it'll be Tuesday. If not, it will be Friday.
And if she can't do hers on Tuesday, then I can do my next case on Tuesday. So you will still get a case on Tuesday. We just don't know if it's going to be my case yet or her case.
Right. But yeah.
So, like we say in every episode, we can be heard on pretty much any social media that you can think of. We appreciate you guys spending your time with us very much. We understand the importance and value of that. So thank you to all the listeners. Thank you to all of the potential listeners. And we really, really appreciate the support We understand that right now our audio is not the best.
Yeah, our videos.
Our videos are not great. We don't know where to look. We don't know really what we're doing at all.
Yeah, we're a little, what you would say, noobish.
And we're hoping that practice will make perfect in this situation. We're getting better equipment. So hopefully by the next couple of videos, we will correct the visual in a lot of ways and the audio in a lot of ways as well.
You're like, we're gonna correct the visual.
I didn't do that. First of all,
did it down here.
I'm just speaking with my hands. Isn't that what we do here? We speak with our hands.
Fingers. We speak with our fingers. Sorry.
But anyways, so please be patient with us and thank you for hanging in there.
Yes.
And we will get better at this. We are figuring it out one episode at a time. I promise.
Yes, we will definitely get better. I do want to ask, I know some of our podcasts have been a little short. Some of them, have been, a little bit longer. But we would like for y'all to let us know. Would you rather keep the short ones, the 25 to 35 minute ones? Or would you rather have some that are like 45 minutes to an hour? We're just trying to figure out, what y'all would rather listen to. So if you could just, send us an email at Render the Darkness Pod. Wow. Render the Darkness Pod at gmail.com. Sorry.
Do not email the one she said. It's not correct.
Don't do that. And just let us know, or, leave us a comment on Spotify, on YouTube, Facebook.
YouTube.
I did say YouTube.
Sounds like you're saying YouTube.
I said YouTube.
Oh.
Oh, what a day. But anyway, yes. If you could just let us know, we're going to try to, do what y'all would prefer.
Also, on that note, I would also like to say that, and I think we said it in the last episode, but maybe not. Again, one of our main goals is to hopefully potentially be a trusted and comfortable platform for our listeners to want to come on. And if you have a story, or your family has a story, or you have a case or personal experience or anything of that nature, we're really hoping to eventually become a platform for you guys to come and do that on. So if you have something like that and you want your face or your voice to be on the podcast, we're really hoping we can get a lot of just regular listeners to be able to come forward and tell their stories themselves if that's something that you're comfortable with. If not, and you'd rather somebody else do it and you trust us to do it, by all means, please send us your case. Tell us your story. Just email it to us in some kind of a Word document. And we'll be more than happy to tell it for you and do an episode on your case.
For sure.
Yeah. And again, that email is renderthedarknesspod at gmail.com.
What did I say?
Render the pod.
Oh, my brain isn't working today. I'm sorry, y'all.
But yeah, thank y'all again very much for spending your time with us. We really do appreciate you.
Yes, very much. Thank you.
And we are
Render the Darkness.
Bye. Bye.